Hello, everyone. My name is Angel Ransom. I'm coming to you or speaking to you today and would like to acknowledge the Lheidli territory here in Prince George, British Columbia. I am from the community of Nakaslii-Watan, which is about 2 hours west of here. And I'm from the Kwamba-Watan clan. I am a First Nations land use planner, and I specialize in community development planning, resource management planning, and major project planning. I'd like to start our presentation and discussion today by acknowledging the breaking news on May 27th that remains of 215 children found buried at a former BC residential school in the Kamloops-Secwepemc territory. As you can imagine, this breaking news has shook the nation. It's made international headlines, and rightfully so. This is a reality that the Indigenous people in our communities have endured, have overcome, and have survived. And so on that note, I'd like to take a moment of silence to honor those 215 innocent children that lost their lives simply due to the fact that they were just Indigenous. It's heartbreaking, it's real. I mean, I myself am a survivor of a survivor. My grandmother went to the Lejack Indian residential school here in the central interior of the province not that long ago. My mother went to the Prince George College not that long ago, and I went to a day school called St. Maria Greti that is located on the traditional village of my community. And so it's a reality that this is striking close to home for so many people across this country, and rightfully so. It's not history, it's reality, and we need to recognize that and work towards reconciliation and healing. And so on that note, I'll leave it at that, and we'll take a moment of silence, please. I ask that you please bow your heads. Thank you, everyone. Snatchalia, Masicho. With that stark reminder, healing is going to be the path forward. And on that note, I would like to take another moment here before we get into our discussion to take a moment to offer tobacco in the spirit of reconciliation, in the spirit of healing, in the spirit of support and working together, as we can't do this individually. And so why and when do we offer tobacco as Indigenous people? I'll explain a bit about this before I do my offering. So offering tobacco in the form of a tobacco tie is a custom that is shared by many Indigenous people. Tobacco is offered for many reasons and in many different contexts. It is appropriate when asking for assistance from an Indigenous elder, knowledge keeper, or person to offer tobacco. When the person accepts the tobacco, they are agreeing to help in some way. Offering tobacco is a respectful way of asking for assistance. And sorry, I'm going to pause. Sorry, bad weekend to have allergies, so I'm pausing there. Okay, I'm going to go back to the start of why and when to offer tobacco. So why do we offer tobacco? Offering tobacco in the form of tobacco tie is a custom that is shared by many Indigenous people. Tobacco is offered for many reasons and in many different contexts. It is appropriate when asking for assistance from an Indigenous elder, knowledge keeper, or person to offer tobacco. When the person accepts the tobacco, they are agreeing to help in some way. Offering tobacco is a respectful way of asking for assistance and not as a symbol of gratitude after help is provided. When someone accepts the tobacco, they are agreeing to listen openly and without judgment and to support you as best they can. It is appropriate to offer tobacco when asking for a song, an opening prayer, a teaching, Indigenous knowledge, or for advice. This should not replace remuneration or honoraria. So a little tobacco offering 101. And again, in the light of healing and working together, I offer this tobacco today to each and every one of you that are conference attendees and organizers and planners. So thank you for listening to my opening remarks having that moment of silence. And now I look forward to handing the floor over and having this discussion with my colleague, Sarah. So over to you, Sarah. Thank you.
Thanks, Angel. I'd like to acknowledge that I am presenting today from the unceded and ancestral territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh Nation. I'm Sarah Atkinson, and I'm a colleague of Angel's. We're working on the Indigenous Planning Working Group, and in my spare time, I'm a development consultant delivering affordable and supportive housing across the province of British Columbia. So thank you so much for that, Angel. Your ceremony was lovely, and the moment of silence was much needed today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that introduction. I look forward to our discussion on a lighter note. It's been quite amazing to be a part of the Planning Institute of BC's Indigenous Planning Working Group and getting to know each and every one of my fellow committee members. So thank you for opening that up today and having this discussion. And so we'll just jump right into it now. I'm excited. So Sarah, I'd referenced the Indigenous Planning Working Group. So can you tell me who formed the Indigenous, I'm going to call it the IPWG moving forward in the presentation, another acronym, but it's just because we have a long name. But can you please tell me who formed the IPWG and what were the objectives?
Yeah, the PIBC appointed the IPWG, and they gave us the two objectives, I guess, to develop and recommend to the committee and board potential relevant and achievable strategies and actions for the Institute and the planning profession to respond to both the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's report and to Canada's National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls.
Thank you. Well, it's timely that this committee has been formed, and being part of it, I know the amount of work we still have ahead of us. So on that note, how long has the IPWG been working together?
We had our first meeting in August of 2020.
Oh, it's coming up to about a year now. Time flies.
Yeah.
So I guess my next question for you today is, what has the committee been working on for the last 10 months?
Well, we started our work following, the mandate provided to us, the objective provided us to by the PIBC board, and we started reviewing the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's final report, and also Reclaiming Power and Place, the final report of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. And we found these two reports really linked by collective trauma caused by colonial systems and processes. And so throughout these documents, we identified a message, and that was the demand for fundamental right for respect for First Nations rights, culture, knowledge, and traditions. And how, the respect of those, the rights of those indigenizing planning could impact our profession and could help to heal some of the deep wounds that affect us all. And the positive impacts of that could be for the profession of planning. We found it profound of what could change and what that could look like. And so through this work, we realized there was a larger call to action, and that was to decolonize our institution, our practices, and our approaches. And so our work has broadened from that original mandate to encompass a framework for reconciliation, and the framework that would lead ultimately to a path of decolonization. And so we started off exploring what reconciliation meant. And we looked at the TRC's definition of reconciliation, and I'll just share that with you. Reconciliation is about establishing and maintaining a mutually respectful relationship between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people in this country. In order for that to happen, there has to be awareness of the past, acknowledgement of the harm that has been inflicted, atonement for the causes, and action to change behavior. And so we took the Truth and Reconciliation statement And we unanimously agreed that the IPWG's roadmap would follow the path laid out by the TRC Commission. And so our roadmap that we are now following is awareness of the past, acknowledgement of the harm that is being inflicted, atonement for the causes, and action to change behavior.
Thank you for that, Sarah. It's definitely not a light, easy undertaking for a committee. I definitely respect the interest to have these hard conversations on these very complex matters. And so kudos to the committee for taking this leap of moving forward towards a reconciliation. Thank you for that. So my next question for you today, Sarah, is how will the IPWG approach reconciliation and the roadmap that has been adopted?
Yeah, we're all new to this, Angel, and we talk about this all the time, and you and I have talked about this. We're sort of forging a path here. I'm sure there'll be stumbles along the way, and it's hard and deep work. And the first thing that we did was we reviewed other organizations' approaches to reconciliation. And as a group, we discussed sort of what we like, what resonated with us, what we felt wasn't working. And then we really identified what, some of those elements that we felt were going to work for us. And we continue to modify that, as every 2 weeks we meet, and we continue to learn and to grow and to change our decision making and the way we're doing our work. And I think we're trying to decolonize our group as we go, and some of those innate things that are in there that we don't even realize. So there's no one framework that is going to encompass the breadth of what we want to do for the planning profession, and we want to forge that path. And so our priority is a meaningful process that's rooted in authenticity and that results in outcomes with tangible actions that are rooted in truth, so that when we move forward, there will be change.
Thank you. And I respect that you've acknowledged that there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all type of approach or framework for our profession as planners. Each nation across this country is unique, and depending on what the work is ahead, there's definitely going to have to be different approaches. So I very much respect that, and thank you for that. My next question for you, Sarah, is what stage is the working group at in the process today?
Yeah, we're at the awareness of the past stage of our work. So in our 4 steps, we're at the first stage. We're uncovering truth about the history of planning in BC and the Yukon and the harms inflicted on First Nations people, language, and culture that continues to harm First Nations people, language, and culture, which we see this weekend in the news. Because as Maya Angelou said, if you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going. So the IPWG has unanimously agreed that our first step is hearing about Indigenous experience with planning and planning institutions. And that's both through guest speakers to our group and through our own research and information gathering. A first reaction to this work, I think, was or could have been develop a plan and start strategizing and making lists and action items and how are we going to gauge what we're doing and where we're going. But we're really committed to doing things differently and doing our best to ensure a deep and meaningful process so that we can guide meaningful and lasting change that is rooted in that truth that we're seeking. So we're sitting in uncomfortable gray areas. We're trying not to rush to conclusions or actions, and definitely not solutions at this point, because we still don't know the truth of where we're coming from. So we're going to listen and we're going to learn, and we're really committed to that. It's sometimes difficult for the group not to have an action plan, not to follow some plan to get somewhere. But we don't know where we came from yet, so we don't know where we're going to go. And we're really sticking with that as our priority right now in this truth process. So, in following this, the approach we hope will result in a more authentic and meaningful outcome that's rooted in that truth that we're exploring.
Thank you for that. You said something that I think is, well, to listen and to learn. That is so very important. And, that's the way I was raised, as, going back to my grandma's for or every Sunday lunch, and it's always sit down, listen, and speak when you only talk when you're spoken to. And I think now is a very critical time for us to listen and learn from one another, and to do it from a place of open minds and open hearts, and knowing that there are going to be really uncomfortable conversations, but they need to be had in order for us to understand, in order for us to grow and to learn and to move forward. So thank you for acknowledging that. That's a great starting place for us. Even as planners, I go into a community, and that's the first thing I have to do is listen and learn about who I'm working with. And so thank you for that. So my next question, just going to be wrapping up this portion of the Q&A. Well, two more. How will we ensure a meaningful process that is rooted in authenticity based on what we've just been discussing? And it was what we've discussed as a committee.
Yeah, I love what you said there about open hearts and open minds. So, that's really going to guide us. That's what we're hoping is going to guide us, is that ability to learn new things and shift as we go. And we've been doing that for 10 months, shifting as we go. And everybody's so open to it, and everybody's so open to hearing each other and pivoting. Oh, we hadn't thought about that before. Okay. And then, look where we came from what the PIBC board gave us to what we've recently asked them to adopt, which is, our roadmap, our reconciliation and decolonization plans. So we've come a long way because we're willing to learn and change and shift and grow. So that's what we're going to, stick with, is open hearts and open minds. And from the beginning of our work together, we really committed to a process to fully engage with First Nations colleagues and organizations. But we also want to ensure that engagement was done in a respectful manner that ensures that we co-create a new relationship and a new way forward together. So to that end, our group has committed to undertaking research and ensuring that where knowledge is already available, we're accessing it where possible. And we're going to engage with First Nations and organizations for their direct experience, knowledge, insights, and guidance, and not for knowledge that we can gain readily available through interviews, through media, through articles. So in this way, we hope not to put the heavy lifting of this work on our First Nations partners, but rather to gauge from them their personal experience, their organizational experience.
That's great. Thank you for that. My last question for you today, Sarah, is what will be the, pardon me, let me start that again. What will be the outcome? Sorry. What will be the outcome for the IPWG?
I mean, that's part of the challenge of our work, is that we don't know, but we're excited about co-creating in a relationship and a new path forward with Indigenous colleagues, organizations, and nations throughout British Columbia and the Yukon. And, we're excited about being part of reconciliation for the planning profession. We're not going to undertake it all. We're not going to achieve it all, but we're excited to be a part of that and to help guide it in some small way. And we're really excited about, decolonization of planning and the opportunities that would have for Indigenous planners and those like yourself, Angel, who are indigenizing planning. And so it's exciting work to be involved in. We're forging a new path for PIBC. There's no clear rules, there's no guidelines. So it's exciting and a little bit frightening at the same time.
Thank you, Sarah. Such great discussions up until this point today. And again, the news was unthinkable. It outrages a lot of people. We knew of this stark past. And I guess in closing on this portion of our discussion here, is just that acknowledgement. So thank you for that, Sarah.
Yeah. Thanks, Angel. Thanks for the question.
We'll switch roles here, and I'll hand the mic back over to you.
Thanks, Angel. So that was a little bit about our group, and I think now we're going to be able to delve a little bit into, Angel's perspective on some of the work that we're doing. So we really rely on Angel. We're so blessed to have Angel in the IPWG to provide us with indigenizing planning perspective right in our group, and we couldn't be more blessed to have such a great partner for us. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, Angel, and I'm very excited to hear your responses and hear how the work's been going for you. So our illustrious guest speaker, Jessie Hemphill, gave us a lot to think about, especially about decolonization versus indigenizing. And our work together is focused on decolonizing planning in BC and the Yukon, while much of the work you do through your company is focused on indigenizing planning. So how does it feel to be involved in both sides of this work?
Well, it's no easy feature. Thank you for the question, by the way. All jokes aside, it's a very unique position for me to be in as an Indigenous woman that specializes in Indigenous planning, that works for communities, but also engages with the industry world, the corporate business world, the governments of the world, the academic institutions of this world. And I think how it feels for me to be involved in both sides is a blessing and a curse in that shell. I say that with good intention, in that I wish there was more angels like myself, more planners that did what I do, because there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, that I recognize in building community capacities so that they can do better planning and management of their territories and seek economic prosperity and unity, is all at the same time of having the ability to have places to go and practice their culture and traditions. And so that side of work is quite daunting at times. And the flip side, I find, is a lot of my work is through education and awareness creation of what to do and what not to do in working with Indigenous communities. And I'm proud and happy to be a part of that education learning experience. And I guess there's times where it's challenging, where some non-Indigenous people or communities or companies take the business as usual route and don't care to learn or have the willingness to learn, which is frustrating at times. It's kind of like that mentality of taking 10 steps forward and 4 steps back. So it's a never-ending level of work. That's how it feels for me, but it's important work that needs to be done. So thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely daunting work. There's a lot to be done, and it's going to take a long time, but without the angels of the world, the work won't even get started. So yeah, kudos to you for taking it all on and taking on both sides of it. What a challenge.
Thank you.
As a group, we've committed to decolonizing our very approach to the work that we're undertaking. And I know there have been a few meetings where you've been a very strong advocate for this. In particular, for the group to take things slow, listen, and sit in the uncomfortable spots of we don't know, rather than rushing to conclusions, actions, and solutions. So what about that approach really speaks to you?
It's respect. It's, this approach, and I really, really appreciate your acknowledgement of how we as a committee have remained flexible and open-minded and have shifted as need be, as many times as need be. And that's just the way I think addressing reconciliation has to begin. It starts with being uncomfortable, but it starts by talking about it. And that's what we're doing here today. And as we had acknowledged through our many points mentioned today, it's complex, it's daunting, and it's not going to be solved overnight. And so I just respect the willingness of our committee to take that approach and be patient and be willing to adjust as need be. I know, like you'd mentioned, planning is a very process-oriented thing in some days, check boxes, plans. And this is one that just does not fit within one box. And so us as a committee being mindful of that is a great starting point. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Angel, what impacts do you think the decolonization of PIBC might have for you and for First Nations people in BC and the Yukon, but perhaps a little bit closer to home? Are there specific impacts that you think that might have for the Mackenzie First Nation?
Yeah, I guess, Indigenous communities and organizations at the end of every day have wanted to alleviate the poverty and social impacts in their community. They want to uphold, honor, and practice their cultures and traditions. We want higher standards of living for our people through economic development opportunity. And, Chief Charlene Gale of the Fort Nelson First Nation had summed it up just so well in a few words, that we want our communities to look like your communities at the end of the day. We want equal opportunity, equal access to prosperity through unity and, and that's going to require not only a mind shift, but a policy shift, the way we do things. It's going to require a shift in the structures and the processes and the policies. And so I find that decolonization of PIBC through planning is going to play a huge role in that, because we are the people, the Jackies and Jacks of all trades, that often have to interface with all the moving parts of change through government, through legislation, through corporate ways of thinking, through helping build communities from the grassroots up. And so planning is going to play a crucial role in making the shift as a country, as a profession. And, I too want to see that for my community, that this provides an opportunity and space to recognize reconciliation and its important role in moving our country forward, and that we need to focus on how we partner and take a broad and balanced view on what needs to be done to address reconciliation, to alleviate poverty, and to provide a future for the generations. And I guess it's the way, in summary, is that it's my responsibility as the current generation for my future generations to come to make a better life for them. Thank you.
What an impact you're going to have, Angel. You're quite the force.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm not laughing. You know me, I get that little giddy, nervous laugh at times. I'm only human.
No, it's amazing. The next question is a little long, so bear with me. But we'll get somewhere here. So being in Prince George, you live along the Highway of Tears, and I'm sure the genocide of Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirited people has impacted your community directly. And I recently read an article in which 85-year-old Mabel Todd from the Kasley Nation was interviewed at the annual Women's Memorial Walk. And she said it's so important that she will continue to walk for the women who have lost their lives and the families they leave behind. Even when she's 100 years old, she will continue to walk. What does the genocide of Indigenous women, girls, and how does the genocide of Indigenous women and girls and two-spirited people affect you? And what immediate work would you encourage planners to undertake to make a change today to put an end to the genocide of Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirited people throughout BC and the Yukon?
Thank you, Sarah. I'm just taking a pause here to think about my response as we acknowledge the topic of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls is unbelievable in my mind. The fact that we even that we're having this conversation, why was this happening, and why? Sorry, I just get so frustrated, I guess, at the end of the day when it comes to this topic, being an Indigenous woman. I mean, the idea that I can't even drive 2 hours west of Prince George right now to, like McBride, BC. I, for example, had to drive out there, and I stopped at a roadside rest stop to use the washroom. And before getting out of my vehicle, I had to take a look at my surroundings, and there was 2 men there. And it made me so uncomfortable that I decided to hold my rest break and get in my vehicle and drive up to a side road where there was nobody around, simply because of the fear that is instilled within me to be a solo Indigenous woman that does not feel safe going to a rest side stop. So how has the genocide of Indigenous women and girls affected me? That there is a prime example of the day-to-day things that I, as an Indigenous woman, have to endure and think about. It's an extra layer of complexity and stress to have to come from a perspective of where I'm having a nice drive out in the middle of nowhere, but I'm too scared to use a rest stop because there's men there and I'm all by myself. So back to you, Sarah. Oh, sorry, that was a 2-part question. So yeah, the genocide of the Indigenous women, past, present, and God knows how long, has real impacts on Indigenous women today, as the short story I just shared with you. And so you'd asked, what immediate work do I encourage planners to undertake to make a change to put an end to this genocide? I think one is having these uncomfortable conversations, as I keep saying, because it's important to acknowledge that this is real, that it is still happening today. I mean, there's Mackie Basil, who is from a community 40 minutes north of my hometown, that is still missing. There is Madison Scott, who is an hour south of my hometown, that is still missing. And that's just 2 off the top of my head examples of women that are still missing today within just the last 10 years of my life. And so we need to have these conversations. We need to look at restructuring our approach, our thinking. Us as planners, we shouldn't have to plan for protection, but I mean, it's a reality and we're going to have to accept it, not accept it, but be ready to focus, I guess, more energy and effort on rather than just writing a report. Look at that missing and murdered Indigenous women's report and look at the recommendations and the Truth and Reconciliation and figure out ways how we're going to action those recommendations. That's my recommendation from one planner to another on how we address these issues. Is a lot of interviews, a lot of research has been done with the people that have been impacted themselves, and they're telling you how they want this addressed. So again, going back to this listen and learn points that we had talked about, is starting there, I guess, in a nutshell. Sorry, I'm getting a little heated, as rightfully so, but I just ask for help, ask for guidance at the end of the day. And if you're uncomfortable about it, maybe when you do have these hard conversations, if you're in a community, make sure you have counseling supports on site, mental health, emotional supports that are there, crisis lines, crisis resources to the community, because sometimes these hard conversations pull off band-aids and open up old wounds and can trigger people. And so just be very mindful of that. I guess there's so many things I could say on how we can be better as planners, but just be gentle, be patient, and just be prepared to be unprepared, I guess would be my closing remarks on that question. Thank you, Sarah.
Great, thanks, Angel. And I hope, back to what you were discussing before, I hope what resonates with people in that is, a few things is that this affects you today, that this affects your life and the decisions that you make. This isn't something happening out there or that happened in the past, that this genocide continues to happen and affects your day-to-day life. And I hope that really resonates with people, and, the listening, learning, and supporting. I hope that people have heard that today, and that this is something that should continue to be at the forefront of all planners' awareness. Thanks, Angel.
Thank you.
So what about our work together on the IPWG excites you the most?
Well, on a more positive note, I know it might have been a little bit of a heavy presentation today for my fellow planners that are watching, but it's the reality. And so thank you for, first of all, hearing my perspective as an Indigenous woman and planner, but forward thinking and positive. What excites me most about the work we're doing is just that it's about change and making the shift as planners to make a better world for all of us at the end of the day. It's not going to be easy, but nobody ever said it would. And as an elder once told me, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that those words have always resonated with me. And so I'm excited to see this change because it's been long overdue. And, you know, I take my hat off to any planners that are going down this path to work with their Indigenous partners and peoples and communities to make it all a better place for us. I think just, you know, it excites me. We got to start having these on the ground conversations about, you know, the practical applications of larger policies and recommendation reports, and talk about how we're going to implement it and co-create it, co-design it, and co-manage it. So I'll leave it at that. I know I could talk all day long about everything Indigenous planning, but I know our time is limited today. So thank you, Sarah, for the wonderful questions and for being my panel partner.
Thank you, Angel. And I really want to honor that, you know, it got personal and you're so strong to come and share these things with everybody. And we just so much appreciate you on the group. And I'm sure everybody who's listening is going to appreciate your answers and your contributions to everything that is going on with the IPWG. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And just in closing for me, we just do want to share, the group wants to share that we are looking for anybody who wants to help contribute to the group, anybody who's a planner or has experience with planning in British Columbia and the Yukon. We're Indigenous advisors in any capacity, or people who have anything to share with our group. Are really looking for people to be involved with what we're doing. So, thanks.
Thank you.